You're a startup founder. You think your product is amazing and feel like more people should be buying, but the road is long and slow. It feels like you're stuck. There's always one thing I ask startup founders. Have you talked to your customers? They almost always say, heck yes, we talk to our customers all the time. But what I find is they're either selling or trying to improve their product. These are not customer-focused conversations. If we can get curious about our customers, then we can uncover critical insights that will help us build to the next round. I'm Anna Firmenov, and welcome to Building with Buyers, a show about startup growth where I'll explore how customers help startups build to the next round. Shoshana Kordova, thank you for joining me on the show. I've wanted you to come on for a while. We've been connected for a while, and I think this is going to be an interesting episode because I haven't really had conversations with other customer-focused, customer insights, customer research-focused folks other than my very first launch episode for season 5 for Building with Buyers. I haven't really brought anybody on. So I'm excited to have you, founder of Peel Product Marketing, where you're telling the right story to the right audience. You're helping companies tell the right story to the right audience. And 3 times founding product marketer with over a decade of journalism experience. I want to talk about that journalism experience in a moment. But first, thank you again for joining me.
Yeah, so happy to be here, Anna. I think we actually connected on LinkedIn because we kind of saw each other's LinkedIn posts. We're like, oh my God, yes, me.
You know me, you get me. It's always exciting when, you can connect with folks and you're like, wait a second, this looks like my other half, right? So there's so much overlap. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you before we get into your journalism background actually is I'm finding folks that are really deeply interested and actively working within this fractional kind of product marketer realm. There are a lot of product marketers out there. Many of them are doing full-time work. Many of them I feel like I'm seeing more get hired into companies because they're seeing how important this work is, positioning, messaging, tying it back to the product, story, strategy, right? And product marketing, that's what it encompasses. So there are so many out there. How would you say you try to and differentiate yourself? Has that been difficult? How's that going?
Yeah, so my focus is on customer-infused messaging. So that's really where the customer insights come in, because for me, that's the beginning of the process, right? In order to really understand what's missing in your positioning and messaging, I really believe that you have to start by going to the customers because they're the ones that actually have the pain that you're trying to solve, and they're the ones that can express it best. So why wouldn't you go to your subject matter expert? They're your subject matter expert on their own needs. And once you start talking to the customers and understanding their customer journey, not from the time they started using your product, but from the time they realized they had a problem and they needed to solve it so that you can get into the mindset of your prospective customers and your whole audience and understand what is it that's making them realize that they even need a solution? And only then are they going to even start looking at you, maybe some of your competitors, and then you can understand, how do they realize they have a problem? What impact was that making? How did they realize this was a big enough problem that they needed to solve it, right? Because we all have problems, right? We wake up in the morning, we have problems we're solving. We don't always buy a product to solve it. So it also has to be big enough that they need to solve it. And you have to understand why, what's the impact that this problem was having on their business. And once you understand that, then you understand what were they looking at when they were looking at solutions? You come to understand why they picked your solution. Then you can eventually get to how they're using your product to help them solve that problem. But if you don't start with the beginning of the customer journey and that problem awareness, then you're not really going to get into the minds of your customer. So I start by getting those customer insights and then turning that into positioning and messaging so that the messages like will resonate with the other customers because it's the same problem.
Shoshana, I am on board with you. Like, this is also my bread and butter. But how do you differentiate from all the other product marketers? Like, I think that some of them do this work, some of them don't, but there are many that do. And so being in this space, being among other product marketers out there, whether full-time or fractional, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you think about that?
Yeah, well, positioning and messaging by itself is a pretty big bucket within product marketing. But even that is not the thing that all product marketers are amazing at, right? There's so many buckets under product marketing that you can specialize in so many different pieces of it and still be amazing. And yet there's not even necessarily that much overlap. So, definitely I'm within the kind of positioning and messaging and storytelling bucket. There's people who are more focused on the product launches, more focused on sales enablement. There's so many different places that you can specialize within product marketing. And then positioning and messaging is sort of the bucket. But within that, I'm actually not seeing a ton of people that are specializing in speaking to customers in order to get those customer insights that they then turn into the messaging.
Yeah. And I actually see this too. Like, well, first of all, early stage startups, they don't talk to their customers in the way that you just mentioned of take me through the buyer journey, the entire buyer journey. It's usually just like, oh, the salespeople just know as they're closing the sale, right? They're like, oh, okay, we have some glimpses into the buyer journey, but that's not really a customer interview where you need to take the person back to be thoughtful about what was going on in their life and what conversations were they having? What else was on their mind? What were they worried about? All this stuff is so juicy and so interesting. And so that's not happening. But even in larger companies, even if this work is happening, there's plenty of mistakes going on. There's, for example, smushing everyone into one bucket. Like all of the personas get packed together, the users, the non-users of the product. And you actually kind of like feed people questions, like maybe survey questions too, where you're asking them specific things like, does this positioning make sense to you? Instead of coming at it from a blank slate and looking for those words and phrases that they're using and using those insights, right? So I agree with you. It might be that the product marketers are really good at launches or talking about product features or, I don't know, messaging in some other way. But those interviews, that I think is for me too. Like that's been my differentiator. I didn't realize that people don't, and like Hannah, who at some point I'll also bring on to the show. She's awesome. She's got like the psychotherapist background. So you can just imagine like how she uses that in order to help her with these interviews. I think that it's a skill. You get better at it over time. Like talking to people is not as simple as just asking them questions and getting answers. That's not what's going on here. So I think that's really cool and agree with you. Tell me about journalism. Like, how has that helped you with the work that you do working with clients?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned psychotherapy and, that's where you're like asking your clients questions, right? Well, with journalism, it's the same kind of thing, right? You're not treating people, but you're trying to understand a story by looking at all the smaller component parts and speaking to people involved in it, asking them questions, drawing them out in order to then take those insights, put them all together, put that puzzle together, and turn it into a coherent narrative. Now, that's not really too different from product marketing. So I think it's actually the skills are much more transferable than I even would have expected. There's sometimes, especially with the focus, when you focus on the customer insights, it's actually really similar to journalism. And I think it's one of the things that speaks to me about focusing on that, because what I find with like product marketing, it often tends to be kind of the least fluffy piece of marketing. And that really speaks to me because with journalism, if you're kind of doing a good job, right? It's not meant to be fluff. It's meant to be like you're talking about either an actual event that happened or actual ideas or, things that are out there in the world that you're reflecting back to your audience. And that's the same idea with customer interviews, that there's something that's out there in the world. There's a way that people are using your product to help them solve their real life problems. You're not making that up. You're not sitting in a silo in front of your laptop and saying, or asking ChatGPT even, right? Like you're actually hearing from the source of what their real life problems are. And then you're telling that story to other people.
I like that concreteness of product marketing as well. When you say fluff, are you talking about like brand marketing, like that more creative stuff where there's a million different directions you could go in, but it depends on like, how do you want to look and feel to your target audience? Like, is that kind of what you're talking about when you say fluff?
Well, I think all kinds of marketing are subject to different varieties of fluff. Like within product marketing, that fluff tends to come out like jargon, right? Like, maybe repeating the like technical terminology that actually is just used within your company and doesn't
like AI powered. Everybody's saying AI powered.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care that you're AI powered. What is the benefit for me? No benefit. I mean, it's kind of expected now.
Right. I heard a good analogy of someone saying like, using word processing instead of typing on the typewriter. It's like, are you going to say, well, it's, word perfect powered, right? In the days of word perfect, right? No, that doesn't make sense. That's just the assumption at this point. So you have to explain like, who cares? That still doesn't explain what problem that's solving.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that there's something to be said around the concreteness of product marketing and pulling out those key insights, key phrases, key terms, key ideas, key themes, right? It's actually a concrete thing. You're not making this up. Although some product marketers do make stuff up, right? Or some marketing teams do make stuff up because they don't go to their customers, as you and I both know. How do you know something is an insight?
Yeah, good question. I think of kind of like different categories of insights, and this actually helps me move things over from sort of customer interview into the messaging and positioning. So, for instance, an ROI stat, right? Where it's like one of the kind of ways I think about asking questions, I really want to understand the before and after. So, right, when you do the whole customer journey, you're understanding kind of what was your life like before you even heard about this product, before you started using it, and what's it like now. So that's something that lends itself to, an ROI stat that you can then use throughout your marketing. So if they're telling you, you're asking them, well, what were you trying to achieve? And they say, oh, I was trying to get, these banking details from all 7 of the banks that we use. And, then you kind of have to keep following up. That's part of the art of the interview is it's not just a checklist where you're like, okay, question 1, check, question 2, check, question 3, check. Okay, all done. Right? Like you need to peel those layers, peel the onion, I call it.
Is that why it's called peel product marketing?
Is why.
Oh my gosh. I thought you just liked bananas. I'm just kidding.
I actually had a journalism professor who talked about peeling the onion when we talked about like interviewing and whatever. So it actually came from him many, many years ago. And it kind of stuck with me as that kind of image of like, yes, that's what you're doing. You're peeling the onion layer after layer. That's how you get to the good stuff.
Hey, it's Anna, host of Building with Buyers. I started the show because I found that customers play such an important role in business growth, but they're often overlooked. We're so focused on net new. But the thing that makes you unique is not your product. There are so many companies solving the same problem, and they have customers too. The thing that makes you unique is your superfan customers. That's your moat. Most positioning and messaging is guesswork. I'm a customer insights and strategy advisor, and I help my clients by interviewing their customer superfans and translating those insights into clear and compelling positioning and messaging that specific people care about. So you get deeper engagement with customers and prospects, increased inbound to demos, better sales conversations, increased word of mouth, and closed deals. If you're done guessing, stumbling along, and want to be more customer obsessed, reach out. I'd love to help. And now back to the episode.
I saw the onion as part of your brand. That totally makes sense. Yeah. So you're peeling towards the insight, but how do you know that it's an insight? Like, what makes something an insight? It's something I think about all the time. And I think what you're trying to say is like, when you ask the question of what's the value you're getting from this product, and the person says, well, it saves me time in my day. And people say this stuff all the time. It saves me time. But time means different things for different people. Sometimes it can be like, I can leave work early on Friday. Sometimes it can be like, how much time? Well, 5 hours. It saves me 5 hours a week, right? So how do you kind of get to that insight and know that something is an insight?
Yeah. So that's where the peeling comes in really handy because it's like they say it saves me time. That's maybe that first answer. And the first answers I find often tend to be the most generic, the most shallow, because it's just like the first thing that pops into someone's head. And they haven't really thought about it. They're just saying whatever pops into their head, which is fine as long as you think of it as your starter question. And then you have to keep asking follow-ups. Oh, it saves you time. Yeah, like how much time were you spending on it before? And then, oh, actually 3 people were spending a whole day on it each week. Wow, 3 people on your team were spending a whole day on it each week. And how much time are you spending on it now? About 5 minutes. Oh, wow, okay. Now all of a sudden you have that comparison. You know exactly how much time you're saving the team. And then you can ask more questions, right? So what are those 3 people on your team doing now with that extra time? Oh, actually, we had this project that's been on the back burner. It's actually going to make us, $200,000 next year. But we just never had time to implement it because everyone was so busy doing this manual work. Oh, okay. You're going to be bringing in $200,000. Okay, there's another, compelling insight that is really talking about the impact that this product is having on your business. And honestly, if I had asked that question straight up, like, what's the ROI? I don't know. We don't really track that. That's probably what the answer would have been. But once you start peeling that onion, that's how you get to those insights. You have to unearth them. They're usually not just sitting there for you to pick up. You have to dig for them.
And then you get to these hey, insights. Customer, give me the insight. Tell me what's the ROI. They'll be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there are roads, paths into that insight. I think that that's actually one of my favorite things is like talking to someone and then talking to another person that's in the ICP and then like finding patterns. Although some people I've spoke to, they treat everybody separate. So like father of Jobs to Be Done, Bob Mesta was like, when I brought him on the show, he said that he treats everybody very separate. He doesn't just put everyone together. The way that I think about these interview conversations, the result from them is like, what are the patterns I'm seeing? Kind of like with when you think about product and like how customers tell you there's like one that's talking about how they don't like that product feature or they would love that product feature. And then there's another one. You don't change it until you get like a substantial amount of people saying like, can you please change that? That really sucks, right? So I think about it in that sort of way where, wow, a lot of people are mentioning it. What do you think about that? Do you look for the outliers? Because that's also kind of interesting. Like there's a super fan customer and there's this outlier thing that they said. Maybe we go down that path. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the type of insight. So, another type of insight that I see that comes up a lot is competitive intelligence that really, for whatever reason, customer interviews are not the first thing that people think of when they think about competitive intelligence, but it can actually be a really great source for that information because as you're walking people through that customer journey and they start thinking about, oh yeah, right. Yeah, I had this problem and I started looking into different ways to solve it. And then they start getting into what else they considered. And they're like, oh, well, I worked with this product, at my last job and I didn't like it because XYZ, right? Okay, that's gold, right?
That's your landing page right there. Like your product versus that competitor. Yeah.
And then I had a demo with this other product, but I didn't like that because ABC. Oh, really? Okay. So I ended up going with you guys because you did this best. So it's the kind of thing where it's like, maybe I'm not necessarily going to change my homepage headline to like the we do this best based on one person, but I might add it to my battle card that I'm giving the sales team as an example, right? And then as I see that more and more people are saying that, then you can say, oh, maybe we actually should be changing our homepage headline. Or there's so many places in marketing where you can start tweaking and experimenting. And I really view product marketing as a feedback cycle where part of it is bringing the insights from the market back into the company. And that's where the customer interviews fit in. It's sort of the under the surface part. So if it's like an iceberg, it's the stuff that you don't see. You don't see like the customer insights and bringing all that information from the market back to the company. What people see is the pretty assets that are the tip of the iceberg because you've turned those insights into marketing assets. But it's a cycle. So you've taken those insights, you've put them back into the market. Well, now you're getting more feedback from the market on those insights. And then you tweak it again. It's a constant ongoing cycle. So there's a lot of places where, you can put something in a LinkedIn post and like, let's see what happens, right? You put something in an email. Maybe you decide to do a webinar on this topic. Like you test it. You see there's so many different ways to test it and get feedback that, it doesn't have to just be like, am I changing the homepage headline or not? There's so many other options.
One of the things that I'm noticing and just learning more about from other folks is that, so I work with earlier stage startups that just need this help right from the get-go, this customer research, positioning, messaging work. But there are larger companies that have been more established, that have had their positioning messaging kind of uprooted now, and they haven't really done this customer research for a while. And I think the reason is because, there's been so much shift in the market. There's been a lot of competition, some new stuff showing up, right? And so that means that you need to come back and do this customer research work again. I don't know, when was the last time you did it? A year ago, 2 years ago? Like everything looks very differently today. And so if you don't do that, then it's like you kind of feel the impact like, wait, this isn't landing anymore. Well, why not? Well, because a lot of stuff has changed. Our ICP has changed about their buyer journey, probably, right? Who else they're looking at, what else they're thinking about, what else they're using, what else they're doing to solve their problem. And so I actually think that this is going to be a big need for the larger companies as market dynamics have shifted. What would you say? Like, who do you work with? What's the company size you work with? I wanted to ask you that actually earlier. And what do you think is the biggest challenge for companies you're working with right now?
Yeah. So in terms of company size, I would say right now it tends to be kind of growth stage startups. So usually I do work with some very early stage, but then I usually don't do customer interviews with them because they don't really have like a solid customer base yet. So sometimes what I've done is do like more of a focus group of target customers. So like if I know that this is your target market, you can still reach out to people who are in your target market, talk to them about like the problems that they're facing and industry trends, etc. And you won't get input on product usage, but you'll still get that general type of understanding. So that's one way to address like if they're too early. But it tends to be more kind of A/B startups.
A/B.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is the biggest challenge that, like, with the work that you're doing, where you're trying to help them? What are their biggest challenges?
Yeah. So what I've seen both as an, independent consultant and also in-house, because I've been in-house up to September is when I went out on my own, is one of the biggest things I see. I've been binging a lot of medical dramas. Like lately, so I'm going to give you a medical analogy because I think that's what's in my head right now. Like just take the common cold, right? Like you have a symptom is like, you're just cold. It's just continuing. You're not feeling better. Your nose is still running. Your throat is still itchy, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, fluids. I heard that I'm supposed to drink fluids. I'm going to go do that. Today, I'll drink water. Tomorrow, I'll stay up all night, but it's okay because I'll drink coffee and that's a fluid. And the next night, I have a party. That's fine. I'll stay up. I'll drink lots of beer. That's also a fluid. It's all good, right?
I mean, sounds logical.
and and what they're not doing is saying, actually, if I don't get some rest and actually, build up my body's immune system and give myself a chance to rest and drink the right fluids, it's going to take me longer to recover. And what I see, like kind of the analogy in the startups that I see, is that the fluids are leads, right? There's like this obsession with startups, like need more leads, need more leads, need more pipeline. And it's not wrong. Like, yeah, you need pipeline. Yes, that's true. But if you don't like get that fundamental like rest to build up your strength, and for me, that means like those insights, those market insights from customers, from the industry, about competitors, all that stuff, that is what shapes your positioning and messaging and where you are in the market, how the market thinks of you, whether they think of you as something that they even need or something that maybe they might want one day if they have extra budget. All that stuff, that fundamental stuff, gets ignored because it's not fluid. So you don't see it when like the patient is just like resting.
Right.
But actually, without that rest and without that kind of basic fundamental understanding of where you sit in the market and what your ideal customer actually needs and how those market needs meet your product capabilities, without understanding how those things go together, you're gonna have a hard time getting those leads.
You're gonna have a hard time recuperating. So companies, stop drinking beer and coffee and just get some rest, right?
Exactly.
Like make some time to do the important work. And it's not rest, right? If I think about the analogy again, it's like this is critical strategic work that needs to get done. I love diving into more of the work that I do day in and day out and that you do, right? Customer research, insights. How do you know something is an insight? The companies that you're working with and what they're challenged with. I loved this conversation and I appreciate you. If anybody wants to find Shoshana, she is on LinkedIn, Shoshana-Kordova. And if you want to check out Peel Product Marketing, I will put the link in the show notes. You used Asset Mule for that. That's
I
awesome.
did. Yeah, Asset Mule is awesome.
Asset Mule is awesome. All right. So I'll put the link in the show notes. And again, appreciate you. And thanks for hanging out with me today. It was fun.
Thanks for having me, Anna. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Building with Buyers. New episodes drop weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on LinkedIn, Anna Furmanov. Visit my website to learn more about how to turn customer insights into positioning and messaging your buyers will understand, furmanovmarketing.com. And don't forget to leave a review if you're loving the show.